Well, somebody to show me what a winning proposal looks like, for the love of God. Today, we are covering the winning proposal format. Highly recommend that you take notes. We are going to go by sequence in order, step by step. This is an order that you can follow on all of your proposals, right? You'll just want to add or subtract the sections that may or may not belong in there based on what your solicitation is asking for. The first thing we're going to start with is the cover page. Your cover page shall contain your company name, of course. It shall also contain the solicitation number or notice ID for the opportunity that you're going after. Also, perhaps the title along with the solicitation number. Don't write a whole sentence. Stick to 3 or 4 or 5 words. Key identifying words, maybe pulling exactly what's from the SAM.gov listing if they've kept that short. Okay, you're putting that on there as well, on the cover page. If you don't know what a cover page is, it's just a one-pager, okay? You're also including the proposal due date. So the date the proposals are due, even if you're submitting it sooner than that, you're just gonna put proposal due date. You can also add your point of contact, your name or your company. We'll have another opportunity to provide more info, so that one's a bit optional, but you have to at least include your company name. Also, you are addressing this to, it's a cover page, so you're addressing this to contracting's point of contact. So if there's a primary POC, whoever that is, him or her, it's her name, it's her contracting office, it's her contracting office address. There's not too much more to a cover page, but the information that we're laying out is important to include. Also, say contracting is asking you to submit, separate volumes. Okay, so if you have to do a volume 1 technical or volume 2 past performance, something like that, okay, of course you're also going to identify, and they'll probably give you specific instructions, so definitely watch for that. But if it's volume 1 technical, you're also, of course, including that on your cover page. Now, when it comes to like logos, typically it's okay, keep them small, keep the colors, pretty like monotone, if you will, grayscale friendly in case they have to print it out. If there's specific instructions that are saying not to, then honestly just skip it because it's not going to add too much. But, if it's okay, there's nothing wrong with having a little circle on the bottom right-hand side of the cover page. That's fine. Okay, so that's pretty much all that we have to say about the cover page. Next will be the cover letter. So the cover letter will typically also be 1 page, could be 2 pages, but we try to keep it to 1 page. In the cover letter, it'll be more of a letter format. You will address it directly to contracting like you would start and write a letter. In that letter, you're going to reference the opportunity that you're responding to. You are going to inform contracting that you are able and eligible to bid on this contract and under this scope of work. You are going to reference that your company NAICS code includes whatever NAICS code this is being procured under, and you're going to actually write out that NAICS code as well as the description of what that NAICS code is for. So ABC LLC, our SAM profile is current and updated, right? So that way you're letting them know. You also have your CAGE code, current and updated, to include performing work under NAICS code 5611104, administrative services. That's part of your letter. If this is a set aside, whether it's total small, woman-owned, any of these, you're also including a sentence to say that we are eligible and qualified to bid on this opportunity as a prime government contractor, as we hold the necessary set-aside requirement to bid on this contract. And then you're stating, of course, whatever that is. Woman-owned, total small business, whatever, 8A, hub zone, veteran-owned, you get the idea. The only time there isn't is when there's not a set-aside, which is known as full and open or unrestricted. So if you don't know the difference, that's something you could look for inside of your solicitation and on the SAM.gov listing page. Okay, also in your cover letter, you are referencing any and all attachments that you are providing in the proposal therein. So it's essentially letting contracting know what they're getting ready to read. And that really should be a mirror reflection of what they've asked for. Okay, so it's just teeing it up nicely. You're not going into too much detail with that. You're not going into all the sub-factors or whatever, but if they're asking for technical past performance price, we can say that. Okay, if they've asked for the SF 1449 form, whatever, we can reference forms. All of that can flow through in a one-page cover letter. Then I also want you to print, date, and sign at the bottom of that letter. You or whoever is authorized for your company, that who is the letter is coming from. Whoever is authorized, submit, which is probably going to be you as the owner, probably watching this video. You're going to print, date, and sign that as the authorized designated person who would also be, signing the forms like a standard form 1449. Okay, so that is a cover letter. Next, table of contents. Table of contents is required for most, but not all. If you're doing something like a request for quote and it's only pricing, you don't need a table of contents because there's not contents. But then you're also not doing a proposal. So some of you don't know the difference between a proposal, RFP and RFQ, right? But if you start getting asked for proposal documentation, you can contain that as part of a table of contents, as you should. And the layout for that table of contents, of course, is going to reflect exactly what the following proposal will contain. This should be, for most of you, probably a automatic table of contents. So regardless of whatever word processor you're using to write your proposals, there should be some form of an automatic table of contents where throughout your proposal you can apply headers, header 1, header 2, header 3, right? That will automatically populate the table of contents and build that in the order, and it will become clickable. So this is not a whole masterclass on how to build table of contents. You can certainly go on YouTube University to figure out how to do that if you don't know how to build TOCs. But you're definitely providing that to contracting. Think of it as a build-up from your cover letter where you're referencing what you're going to provide. When you get to the table of contents, it will include all those details, including all the sub-factors and any of the forms, anything like that in more detail with specific page numbers so that they literally could click to it if they wanted to. That's another reason why we want to use the automatic tables. Next, the next three I'm going to provide to you, these are ones that you will have to customize because every proposal is different. So the first one of the three is going to be technical response, and we're going to flesh this out maybe in a little bit more detail than I have in other videos. So, if you've heard me say technical, definitely you still want to pay attention. And if you're taking notes, there will be specific things to include here, okay? So usually technical could be asked for at this stage. If they're asking for it in a different order, follow their order. If they don't give you an order or you don't know, this is a fair default based again on what they're asking for. So one thing that could be asked for in a technical approach is specs or specifications. We can see this more in supply buys. We can also see this, for example, in construction contracts or just any form of delivery contract or any contract that has a piece of it as a project where equipment, materials, or supplies is being included. For example, this could even exist in something like a janitorial services contract. So let me explain. In a janitorial services contract, they may ask for eco-friendly products to be used, and they want to see that. They want to see what products you're going to be using on the services contract, right? But there's a product piece component. Well, where are you going to be able to demonstrate that? It's not going to be in past performance, and it's certainly not going to be in a price area of the proposal. So it will exist in the technical section, in the technical approach. Part of how you will do this, right, is by using certain products, okay? So there can be an opportunity regardless, right? Like I said, projects, supplies, whatever. For specs or specifications, you're going to outline that detail that out, maybe even include pictures, product labels, these sorts of things. Maybe it's dimensions, right? It depends on what the scope is. This will live in the technical. Also, you could have requests for things like staffing plans, quality control plans, management plans, resumes, key personnel, and then all sorts of sub parts of those. Okay, those will all typically live in a technical area of your proposal, in the technical volume of your proposal. To truly understand the nature of a technical proposal, you are responding to the how. You're not just parroting back the statement of work, like going bullet points, we will do this, we will do this, we shall do this, we shall do this, we will comply with this, we will comply with this. That is not what a technical proposal is. A technical proposal answers the question, how will you be doing this? If it requires a timeline, we're showing a timeline. If there's a project schedule, we are including, a schedule typically in this section. And these are all great things that you can use to give contracting more confidence, right? A big part here that I see winning proposals using, this is the winning proposal format, and we're getting to really the first section where we can emphasize the winning part. What makes a winning proposal? This is where you include your competitive advantage. This is where you include your competitive differentiators. If you find that they're being very kind of strict with what they're asking for in a technical approach, you might not be able to get away with having, a designated few paragraphs or section within the technical that you're just going to call out competitive advantage, right? Or competitive differentiators, right? In some you can, right? If they're not being overly strict, you can, and there's not page limits, things like this, you can squeeze it in there. If you can't, you're kind of weaving and threading the needle. You're writing those in throughout the things that they're asking you for. Maybe you're just bolding, maybe you're emphasizing, maybe you're indenting some of the specific ways that are unique to your company or your team, how you're going to deliver the work that maybe is different than what other bidders, your competitors, are going to be providing, right? And if you are, for example, working with a teaming partner, it's a great question to ask. Like, okay, is there any angle, or let's rephrase that. What are ways that we can approach this contract that might be different from what everybody else is doing? Whether it's terms of a best value contract, like how can we bring more value to the government? Or if we know this is being driven by price and they're going to do LPTA, ask your teaming partner, what are some creative ways that maybe we can save a little bit of money without compromising like the minimum acceptable requirements for this contract? How can we approach this? That's what makes the difference between a winning proposal and a proposal where we're just kind of giving contracting what they ask for, which is great. But if we're giving them what they're asking for, it's kind of like bare minimum. It is only going to take one person to come in to be a little bit better than you, to show their feathers, to show their colors, and then they're going to win. So that's literally what they would be doing. So we want to make sure that that's what you're doing. We're not just answering how, but we're threading in, or we're designating a section, if we can get away with it, to how our approach is going to be better, how it's going to be different. We almost want to attain making contracting feel afraid or like they're going to be missing out by going with anybody else. Think about that. Like, just try that on for size. How can we make the contracting officer afraid to go with any other company? I'm spending an extra minute on this because this is, where you have the most creative license. Can we make them feel so good about working with us that anybody else, it'll feel bad? Maybe can we highlight risks on the project that we're really going to speak to, where others may not really speak to those risks? So contracting is going to feel more comfortable with us because they know that we've got like contingency plans and backup plans, right, for all these risks that you're like calling out in the proposal. Whereas others who are just kind of like checking the box, giving contracting what they asked for, they may not even hit on the risks at all, right? So these are different angles that we can kind of build in. It's like drive it before you buy it. Make you drive the Corvette. That way, when you come back 15 minutes later, you want to buy it because they're going to take it away if you don't. Versus if you never have it in the first place, it's like, I can live without it. It's almost like drive it before you buy it. Marketing, strategy, psychological factors, making contracting afraid to not work with you. And again, this can be on a price, you can do this standpoint. Again, if it's LPTA, or this can be on a value standpoint, if we're going to just make their lives so much easier because we're bringing a creative, unique solution to them. Well, that's the name of this game, guys. That is a big part of a winning proposal. It's not just checking the boxes and say, great, I've learned how to fill out a SF1449 form and a PPQ, and I've given them, my pricing and some past performance. I should really have a good chance at winning this. For those of you who are bidding and not winning, this is your call. This is your invitation. This is a bit more insights into what a winning proposal looks like and why. And I think just hearing some of this stuff, hopefully it kind of gets the wheels turning. Perhaps if you've been feeling a little bit of stagnation, it's been feeling a little bit stale. Hopefully this is a bit of an injection of life to your approach. But with that being said, I could probably keep going, but we're going to keep things moving along in the video, and we'll move to past performance now. And I have a couple things to say about past performance in your proposals. So yes, the known stuff, we'll get it out of the way first. The default is 3. If contracting hasn't asked for specific numbers, we are defaulting to 3 past performance references. Doesn't have to be federal government contracts, can be commercial work. If you're working with a teaming partner, it can be the projects that they've worked on. But remember the 2 R's, and these 2 R's of past performance make or break your past performance section in a winning proposal with this winning proposal format. Okay, the 2 R's are recency and relevance or relevancy. Recency, 3 to 5 years, and very often you will see that called out specifically inside the solicitation instruction offers anyways, so watch for it. But the default is going to be 3 to 5 years. Do not give them contracts that are older than 3 to 5 years as past performance, okay? And then relevancy. Relevancy is the scope. It's the dollar value. For example, so many of you say, I want to start, with supplies contracts, but then, I'm going to switch over to services. I'm just new and I'm scared. Let me just do a small 20K, whatever, and then I'll start going after services and I'll have past performance. You won't have past performance because a supply contract typically is not relevant whatsoever in terms of the nature of the scope of work being done for a services contract. So unless a service contract has a huge deliverable component to it, then maybe, but then they're going to want to see other stuff too. So it has to be relevant to the work being performed and dollar value. 20K, then you're going to use that to go after a $300,000 contract? I don't think so. That reference will not be satisfactory. Okay, it'll probably fail. Okay, so the 2 R's, recent and relevant when it comes to past performance. Also, if you are using teaming partners, you have to have at least a 1-paragraph introduction and teeing up of who the company is that is your teaming partner. This is the place where you can introduce them and let them know why and essentially how qualified they are and why they are the teaming partner for this proposal. So you have to tee that up a little bit, not just like go straight into past performance tables like project, and then it's not even your company or your company's reference, and it's like some of you guys miss that. So we're taking at least a paragraph to intro, tee up who our teaming partner is if you're using one, if you're not self-performing. And then also we're going to use some form of a small business compliance statement. So if in your approach you have to abide by limitations on subcontracting, right? For those of you that are using teaming, once again, you're doing the legal middleman approach. We're also including some sort of small business compliance statement. And in that, we are going to reference key things. This way, because I know a lot of you may get this, contracting may ask, well, how are you satisfying this, right? So we're going to answer the question before it's even asked. Usually that gives them a lot more confidence, lets them know that you are, not a naive, not a contractor who is void of the implementation of regulations in your approaches, right? So you're going to speak to the FAR clause, that is the limitations on subcontracting. We're going to speak to, for example, if you are working underneath simplified acquisition thresholds, underneath the SAT, 250K, we can speak to that, depends on your requirement. If you are using the approach of working with, say, a similarly situated entity, we're speaking to that. And again, the goal of the small business compliance statement doesn't have to be long, can be a paragraph, is where we are demonstrating our understanding of the regulations when it comes to subcontracting. And we are showcasing how and that we are going to be compliant. That way we answer the question before they have to ask it. So all of that you can consider building into your past performance section, right? This is the winning stuff. This is what makes all the difference. You don't have to. Okay, you can check the boxes, but if you're bidding and you're not winning, or you're just starting out and you're literally taking notes and you're pausing or you're rewinding because you don't want to miss any of this stuff, because I'm literally giving you the kind of the secret here. These are things that you can include in your past performance. Now let's move on to our price. When it comes to price is interesting. There's lots of things that could be included in price. At a very minimum, we are including our pricing table that will mirror the pricing CLINs. So if it's 0001, 0002, right? Or if it's 001, 1001, 1002. Depending on how many CLINs for base periods and option periods, we're going to reflect all of those. So there'll be a column for those. It'll be a literal table. We're also going to reflect the period of performance for all of those CLINs, right? So if it's from October to September, 2025, 2026, 26 to 27, 27 to 28, we're going to include all those columns and rows to break those down. In addition to that, we're going to include, I'll say a one sentence, but maybe more brief, scope sentence or scope phrase, so that we know, of course, like what each CLIN is being accounted for. Like what is that dollar value reflective of? Okay, and then we're going to break down based on however they're breaking it down. If they're having units, if they're having totals, if they're doing each, if they're doing month, if they're doing job, if they're doing hours, right? These are the different nomenclatures that they can use to request your pricing to be broken down by. We're going to also reflect that. So it'll typically be like a unit and then a cost and then the aggregate. So the total cost. Okay, so they do that for all the option periods, the base period and all the option periods, and then there's probably going to be some sort of grand total at the bottom. Okay, so that's kind of the best that I could explain a pricing table. And again, if that seemed like too much, again, the easy way is just reflect the pricing CLINs that they're giving you, build a word table out of that. Okay, also in pricing, it's very important. We are including assumptions and exclusions, especially if you're working with a teaming partner too. So what assumptions are, or maybe exclusions, or maybe clarifications are being made about pricing? We need to be careful as we button ourselves up and give the government a price to do something. We have to be very clear about what we are including in that and what we are not including in that. And depending on the scope, right, it may be very clear already or it might not. If it's just a staffing requirement and they're just saying, 20, 80 hours, one full-time person, we're going to give you one full-time person, right? But when we get to more project-based deliverables, well, contracting might assume we're doing this and that, and we're going to think the government's doing that. So this is your opportunity, not in the technical, but now in the pricing section, or if it's a volume, the pricing volume, to clarify. We are providing pricing for this. We are not providing pricing for that. Or we are assuming that we will have this made available to us, or that the government is going to handle this, and we are not building in a price for that, right? There's a section here as part of your pricing with your table to clarify what those items are. And you should be doing that as part of a winning proposal. If you are following the winning proposal format, that's what winners do. And that can be part of, if you want a bit more of a formality, we call this a pricing narrative. Okay, so that in anything else that you want to speak to, for example, in your pricing narrative, if you also want to speak to like a wage determination, let them know that you're in compliance, let them know the occupation code and the rate, right, that you're selecting from the Department of Labor wage determination, whether it's Davis-Bacon or SCA wage. Let them know, we've included the necessary health and welfare, vacation time, all these benefits that federal workers get on government contractors if there is a wage determination required and included in your contract. You can also include this in this section. And again, it kind of builds out and expands out to be more of a pricing narrative section with your pricing table, okay? And another thing that winners do is pricing escalation. So pricing escalation, on average, we're looking at a 1% to 3% increase year on year. That's to account for inflation, that's account for economics, that's account for maybe if you're using a teaming partner who would become a subcontractor, right? Increase in their prices. We're doing a small escalation because that is the typical trend and also the typically acceptable range, depending. The range could be, more or less, depending on what the contract is. But I'm just kind of giving you averages here to think about. This also feeds into what's called balanced pricing. So it could also be a concern. For example, say it's a staffing contract and it's not like a, project or a service where the price just goes up every year. If it's a pricing, if it's a staffing and it's 5 years, are you not going to give your person a raise? Contracting might say, well, that's a risk because after a couple of years, their person might quit if they're not getting any sort of raise. So we see it, on a lot of contracts where that's the case. And I've seen proposals where they just keep a flat figure for all 5 years, and it's, you can. It's not going to scare contracting away. I don't know, honestly, why you wouldn't. And it's just, again, going to feed to understanding balanced pricing, okay? And that is something that contracting looks for. So these are things to consider above and beyond for a winning proposal when it comes to your pricing section and literally not what you're charging for profit, which we talk about in so many other videos, but literally what are you providing as part of your price proposal. Next, there's a section called contract admin or contract data. Sometimes you will see this specifically called for and asked for in your proposals, in which case you will provide. It's not always though. And for those of you who, maybe you're following more of the default approach because contracting hasn't been very strict with their requirements, this is a place where you can include your SF-1449 form, your reps and certs. If they've asked you to sometimes they'll highlight your company name, your cage code, your UEI. Any of those kind of company-specific, more clause-specific forms and documents that don't really fit into a technical, past performance, or price, unless contracting, again, is telling you to put it in the technical or something, you can include a section called contract admin or contract data to house these documents. It's a good go-to. You can put a placeholder and attach these separately from your proposal if they're very lengthy. For example, like reps and certs, you don't want to blow up your whole proposal with reps and certs. You can reference it and attach it separately, something like that. Or if it's just like a 1 or 2 page SF-1449, or maybe you're having to acknowledge amendments, right? Or maybe you're just satisfying that 1 page attestation of the reps and certs, and that's good enough. You can include that in a contract admin section. A lot of people don't know that you can do that. And others, you will just straight up see contract telling you to do that anyways. So this is kind of like an FYI if you didn't know. It's something that makes your proposals a bit more organized. Since we're talking about winning proposal formats, it's a good approach. It's a good thing that you can do. If you find yourself with, oh my gosh, where do I plug all this miscellaneous stuff? Wrap it up, contract admin, contract data section. So next, this is I'm going to call this exact language, okay? And this is going to apply to now all of your sections. I couldn't leave it out. It's super important. And yes, it can make the difference in some instances between a winning proposal and a losing proposal. So when it comes to exact language, we are using the exact language for our sections that the contracting officer is calling out. So for example, if they are saying factor 1 staffing plan, guess what we're doing? Guess what I'm doing? We are having a section in our proposal, probably in the technical, called factor 1 staffing plan. That's not for their reference. That's for your reference. That is them telling you, that's them showing you an inside look of their report card, their scorecard. When they open up your proposal, they're looking for a factor 1 staffing plan. And if you call it just staffing plan or staffing, or factor 1 staffing, like, could throw them off. If they can't find what they're looking for, it's as good as not being in there. So it's very easy to just use. We don't have to be creative, literally copy and paste to build our outline from the instruction to offers so that we are using the exact language in our proposals, particularly our technical sections, but all sections. Similarly, if it's like subfactor A, for the staffing plan, maybe subfactor A, key personnel, subfactor B, retention plan, we have to say subfactor A, key personnel, subfactor B, retention plan. We have to say that exactly. And we have to put it in the same order of those two. And we have to put that in the same order of sections in our proposal. So that is something that is flowing through your entire document. You wouldn't believe how many don't do this, which is why it fits into a winning proposal. It doesn't have to be hard to make a difference. That's not necessarily hard, but it can make all the difference, primarily if you don't do it. Next, I call this one emphasis. And again, this is going to apply to everything that they've asked for. If you're trying to win and you're writing a winning proposal, the way you should approach that will be different and should be different for a lowest price technically acceptable contract versus a best value trade-off contract. If you're not approaching it the right way, you're really not like leveling up, measuring up to a winning proposal. So what I mean by that is if this is a lowest price technically acceptable proposal, what you need to do is make sure that you check the boxes. You don't want to add additional stuff that contracting hasn't asked for. Things that potentially could be used against you or confuse them, and maybe they're not technically acceptable, right? We're literally just giving them kind of what they ask for in that right. And I know that we talked about competitive advantage and technical, and yes, we can weave that in there. I'm not saying not to, but we are not going so over the top like maybe we would with a best value proposal. With the technical, we are giving it straight to them. And then we're making sure that we do a good job on the price. Okay, so that approach is very different, like I said, than a best value or best value trade-off proposal, because we have so much more opportunities to speak to the benefit, to speak to the value, to speak to more differentiators, to speak to risk, right? And that is exactly what we're doing if we have that opportunity, because the lowest price is probably not going to win. We can even look at doing alternate proposals, which I'm not going to go into too much in this video, but with alternate proposals, we can, if we have a better way, but it requires us changing the scope, but it's going to save them money or give them some like huge payoff benefit that maybe they didn't think of or maybe they don't know, yeah, we're doing an alternate proposal for that as well. A lot of times they will allow it. Sometimes they'll explicitly say no alternate proposals, but that just lets you know how many winning contractors are actually submitting alternate proposals. They're literally rewriting the scope themselves. So they're giving contracting what they asked for in a primary, but then they're saying, hey, but you didn't think about all these things, and this will be way worth it if we just do it this way. Alternate proposal, okay? But again, coming back to emphasis, we are speaking to the winning strategy based on how the winning bidder will be chosen, which is it LPTA or is it best value? Now, the next piece is not something necessarily we are putting in our proposal, but it is absolutely an essential part of a winning proposal, and it is part of winning proposal processes and systems, and that is a compliance matrix. So a compliance matrix takes all of the requirements that's asked for, and then you are essentially writing to every single line where it is addressed in your proposal, including even the page number. That way you can give a blank compliance matrix to somebody else, a third party or do red team, and say, here's my proposal, here's our compliance matrix, here's all the requirements. Fill this out. Where did you find all of these requirements in my proposal? And if they can't find them, but you think they're in there, that's great, because that was worth your time, because maybe you didn't call it out enough, or maybe you didn't put it in the right order, or maybe it's just not pronounced enough or announced enough in your proposal. Because if they can't find it, how is contracting going to find it? And they're not going to bend over backwards to try to find it. They're just going to be like, nope, not there. So they failed on that part. You know what I'm saying? So this tool, a compliance matrix, is not something you're putting in your proposal, but it's something that is affecting all of this work that we've just went through going into your proposal. And it's something that you can have a third party go through, or, even as of late, you can have ChatGPT or your favorite AI score your proposal by uploading the solicitation, having it identify all the requirements, making sure it's identified all the proper requirements, and then giving your proposal to it as an attachment, saying, okay, grade this. What are my weak areas? What are my strong areas? This is compliance matrix. This is properly doing reviews. This is how winning contractors perform. And if you're not doing this yet, this is something you should do for every single response, with the only exception being if it's a price-only RFQ. There's not too much to do there. It's really just going to be your price, right? So the winning proposal format, sections to win, show me what a winning proposal looks like. Of course, you have to tailor and customize this to your opportunities. But if you're going after contracts in the federal space, I'm telling you, many, many, many win contracts following this winning format. Now, if you're newer to the channel, you're watching, you're not subscribed yet, definitely consider subscribing. Hopefully this video has added a lot of value to your process, or at least, if nothing else, given you one or two things to add to your existing sections that you're using in your proposals. Consider subscribing to the channel. I try to bring the truth about government contracting that a lot of others don't. And I'm committed to just being transparent and at times bold to accomplish doing that, to accomplish giving you the truth. I'm super passionate about working with small businesses. I've won 32 contracts worth over $15 million in my career, being in the space for over 12 years. Particularly the last 6 years, I've been focused on working with other small businesses to win over $75 million to date. So super passionate about what I'm doing, what we're bringing here to you guys on the channel. Currently running our 90-day bid challenge, where I help you respond to 10 federal contracts over the next 90 days. If you want more information about that, you can email us support@govkidmethod.com. I also have other trainings like my flagship government contract training, which is on my website, currently available to everybody at govkidmethod.com. If you are looking for a self-study training so you don't have too much time to commit to something like a 90-day challenge, the self-training takes you step by step. It's great. We also have our GovRFP proposal writer training, specific and latest and greatest techniques, also including AI. So this is all built into GovRFP. Not available to the public yet, but if you're interested in investing in a training, again, you can email us about that too at support@govkidmethod.com. Other GovCon resources in terms of my teaming partners, right? If you're looking for somebody to just, if you have the budget for it, if you're looking for somebody to just write proposals for your company, right? And you just don't have the time, but you have a business and you're able to invest in that, I've got a great partner where we can hook you up if you want an amazing proposal writing team, writing contracts on behalf of your company, meaning you don't have time to learn it for yourself. It's not cheap, so you have to have a budget for it, but we offer that. We also offer funding and financing, whether it's lines of credit, whether it's invoice factoring, right? So depending on what you've got going on in your business, we have a lot of different resources to support you, depending on where you're at. And if you're just getting started, like I said, a lot of what I offer is educational in nature. That way the budget doesn't have to be as high and you can learn to do this yourself and you can implement and you can win contracts and you can reinvest in the business and continue to grow that way. If you guys are also looking for your daily dose in government contracting, I'm currently uploading videos Monday through Friday every single stinking day. And it's we're doing 8:30 a.m. Central Time. So if you don't know, you have been missing out. We premiere these videos, so I watch them live with you. And you can also ask questions during the premiere. So it's kind of fun sometimes. So between like 8:30 and 9, sometimes goes to 9:15 a.m. You're probably watching a premiere right now. For those of you that are on the premiere, this is a live premiere as well. So we do this daily. So you can get your daily dose of GovCon. Come hang out with me every morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time, 9:30 Eastern, of course. And I think that's about what we've got going on. So again, guys, hope you liked today's video. Smash the like button, helps the algorithm, and more importantly, subscribe to the channel because the algorithm has attacked us. We need subscribers. Every subscription matters, so definitely subscribe to us. And until next time, guys, hope this video was helpful and you got this.